Are you one of the lucky individuals who've been given the honor, and maybe we should say the challenge, of leading your organization's magnet program? Or maybe you're an organization that's just starting to think about launching out onto the magnet journey. Well, if you happen to be one of those that is leading your organization through the magnet journey, or maybe you're thinking about starting it, I want you to know that it's doable, and in my honest opinion, it is absolutely worth it. In today's video, I'm going to break down the key phases of the magnet process and also share some really practical tips to help you feel more confident as you get started and as you move forward. So let's talk about it. Hi there, my name is Katie Stevens, and welcome to the Excellence in Nursing Show. I am a nurse consultant, a coach, and an educator, and I work with healthcare organizations to help them achieve magnet recognition and then elevate nursing practice in that process. So over the years, I've worked with a lot of teams on the magnet journey, and so I really have a good deal of experience in understanding how challenging and also how rewarding it can all be. So whether you're an organization that is applying for the first time or whether you're pursuing redesignation, today I'd like to give you a clear, high-level look at the steps or phases that are involved in the magnet recognition process, as well as I'd like to share some helpful tips at the end to help you get started successfully. So before we dive in, I do want to be clear about one thing, which is today's video is really about giving you a big picture overview of the magnet process. We're going to be talking about what it looks like to submit your application, to complete the documentation, work through, each of the major phases of the magnet recognition cycle. So in a follow-up video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly how I set up and manage magnet projects and how I stay organized, how I prioritize tasks, how I keep, everything moving forward. But for today, we're just going to be focusing on understanding the full journey really from start to finish. And, not really start to finish because we know it's an ongoing cycle, but you get the picture. So I will just say that the magnet application manual has several appendices that are, really give some nice detailed overviews of this process of the overall cycle. There's some great timelines, flow charts, and, a list of all of the requirements during each phase. So I really highly recommend that you keep that handy at all times, really, as your sidekick along your journey. So let's start off by walking through the 5 key phases of the magnet journey. Now, I do want to call out one thing, and that is that the process looks a little bit different depending on whether you're applying as a first-time applicant or whether you're working toward your redesignation, and I'll explain more as we move forward. So the magnet journey for both first-time applicants and redesignating organizations really begins with a good self-assessment. This is a really critical step where your organization really evaluates how well its nursing practices, policies, your nursing outcomes, how well those all align with the magnet standards, and then really in that process, identifying any gaps that need to be addressed. So if you're applying for magnet for the first time, this self-assessment phase really does help you build a strong foundation. It's really about understanding where your organization stands today, and then what structures and processes need to be developed over time as you move forward into your journey. That is things like building professional governance structure if you don't have one already, implementing mentorship and succession planning programs. Maybe you need to create some infrastructure to support evidence-based practice and research. So the good news is that, for first-time applicants, you really do have more flexibility in terms of your timeline. For redesignating organizations, the self-assessment is really just as important, but the focus really shifts. You'll need to be evaluating how well you really sustained your outcomes. You'll want to be addressing any feedback from previous appraisals. You'll also want to make sure that you are aligned with any updates to the magnet standards, because magnet does update their standards and criteria from time to time over the years. I do want to mention right here that I feel like I can't overemphasize how important this self-assessment. A lot of people call this the gap analysis. I really can't overemphasize how important this phase is. The self-assessment really does set the foundation for your entire magnet journey. This is really where you take a deep, honest look at your organization's nursing policies, practices, and outcomes to see how well they align or how well they meet or exceed the magnet standards. And this is also where you identify gaps that need to be addressed. Now, let me just share a personal story that I have worked with organizations in the past, especially redesignating ones, that have tended to kind of gloss over this step. And they have assumed that because they've, been through the process before, that they're still, on track. And I've seen really firsthand how dangerous this assumption can be. I've worked with teams who thought that they had done a thorough gap analysis only to realize, months into the process that several critical pieces were really missing. And then we had to completely realign the project, which definitely cost really valuable time time, caused a lot of unnecessary stress, and it really hurt the organization's momentum. So again, this self-assessment is really where you lay the groundwork for everything that comes next. This is where you build your action plans, you prioritize improvement efforts, and then you begin triaging really what needs to happen first. Now, yes, there will be course corrections along the way, but the more honest you are during this initial self-assessment phase, the fewer major setbacks you're going to have later on. So whether you're applying for the first time or whether you're going through redesignation, this phase is not something to rush through. Again, just want to make sure that I really reiterate that a solid, well-executed self-assessment, or like I said, a lot of people call it your gap analysis, will really make the rest of your magnet journey so much smoother and more successful down the road. So once you've identified your gaps and you've either closed those gaps or you've really created strong action plans and those action plans are in place, the next step is for you to submit your application to the ANCC. Now, there are several documents that need to get submitted during the application phase. For first-time applicants, we've talked about this, that the timing is flexible. You can really submit your application when your organization feels ready to move forward. That gives you time to really align, to your submission with your readiness level and with your strategic goals of your organization. For redesignating organizations, again, the timeline is more structured. You must submit your application by a set deadline that actually aligns with your organization's previous magnet designation. So submitting the application, whether you're a first-time applicant or you're redesignating, really officially signals to the Magnet Program Office that your organization intends to move forward with the full documentation cycle. Once you're accepted, which is great news, then you'll move on to the next phase, which is documentation and evidence collection. So here I just wanted to interject a helpful tip for you all. So if you happen to be serving as a magnet program director or you are heavily involved in the magnet process, I highly recommend setting up some standard work for yourself to stay on top of updates. So the ANCC Magnet Learning Community is really an excellent resource with some, of the most up-to-date information. There are helpful guides, there are process updates, there are also webinars on there. So the magnet standards and processes can change, from time to time. So I think it's really important to regularly check the MLC. And then of course, also always refer back to your magnet application manual. Those two areas, the MLC and your magnet application manual, those are really handy resources. And I would always refer back to those as your sources of truth. So now we're going to move into the documentation and evidence collection phase. So this is phase number 3. So in terms of magnet documentation, this is really where much of the heavy lifting happens. So over a year or two, you and your team, if you have one, will really start to collect extensive documentation to show nursing excellence. This includes a lot of outcome data across your patient clinical outcomes, patient satisfaction, nursing satisfaction and engagement, your nursing workforce outcomes, and you'll also be writing up stories of excellence to meet and hopefully exceed the magnet sources of evidence criteria. There is an extensive amount of documentation here. I can't overstate this. It really does require strong organizational practices, meticulous record keeping, thorough data analysis, and of course, robust project management is probably one of the biggest things to really pull all of this together. And this is how your organization really showcases how you prove and demonstrate that you really are meeting the highest standards of excellence. So the way I look at it is it's like you're building this, huge, comprehensive organizational portfolio where you are looking at, excellence in nursing practice across every area of nursing and across all levels of nursing. So this really is what you use to prove your excellence for magnet recognition. So now let's move on to phase 4, which is the on-site appraiser visit. So once your documentation has been reviewed and accepted, a team of magnet appraisers will visit your organization. So they'll be meeting with nurses, physicians, and other healthcare team members to really assess how well magnet principles have been embedded into daily practice. This visit is really your chance to shine and how you show nursing excellence is really lived out in daily life, and how it's not just written down on paper. So many times the appraisers will use the terms that they're there to clarify, verify, and amplify. So what do they mean by that? So when they say clarify, they may ask for more details on certain programs or outcomes to better understand, how those things align with the magnet standards. When they talk about verifying, they'll often confirm that documented in your documentation is actually truly happening by speaking directly with frontline nurses and other people at your organization. So when they talk about amplifying, this is where they start to really look for powerful stories and examples that highlight how your team really goes above and beyond and how that brings the written narrative to life. So again, the site visit really is your organization's opportunity to demonstrate, your passion, your innovation and excellence, and how that all drives your nursing culture. All right, now we're going to move into phase 5, which is the decision by the Commission on Magnet and also celebration. So after the on-site visit, the appraisers will compile and submit their reports from both the written documentation review and the site visit. And these reports are then reviewed by the Commission on Magnet, who will then vote and make a final decision on your organization's magnet designation. So after that, there is an official notification call. And if successful, your organization earns magnet designation for 4 years. So this is definitely a moment we're celebrating. Woohoo! But remember, the magnet journey does not stop there. So, sustaining that culture of excellence requires ongoing innovation, regular evaluation, and a commitment to continuous improvement. So again, just remember, magnet isn't necessarily the finish line. It really is this commitment to evolving and growing every single day. Now, if for whatever reason there might be requests for additional documentation or any deficiencies identified, please do not panic. There are plenty of resources to guide you through this. I really do recommend reviewing the appendices in the magnet application manual for detailed guidance on addressing any of the documentation requests or deficiencies. So remember, the goal is continuous improvement, and there is a lot of support available to help you succeed. So now let's talk about timelines. How long does this process typically take? I'm going to break it down for you real quick. So conducting your self-assessment and addressing any of your performance gaps can take 6 to 12 months, maybe even longer, and that really depends on your organization's starting point. This phase often involves building or strengthening foundational structures. That is things like your shared governance or your professional governance structure. Could be other things like professional development programs or initiatives to support evidence-based practice or research. So, again, it really kind of depends on your organization's starting point and what your starting structure process looks like and how much really there is to tackle. But I would say 6 to 12 months, potentially even longer. So when we move into the documentation phase, gathering and submitting the required documentation takes, another 1 to 2 years. This is where, strong project management and cross-departmental collaboration are really so critical. Teams during this part will be, collecting data, writing exemplars, and providing evidence that really aligns with the magnet standards. And so that is kind of the documentation phase, is about 1 to 2 years. Then after submitting your documentation, so there's the review process, and then there's the on-site visit, which can take, up to 6 to 9 months. So this includes the ANCC review, any potential requests for additional documentation, and also scheduling the on-site visit, and then also that final decision by the Commission on Magnet. Again, that whole process can take 6 to 9 months. So altogether, the magnet journey typically spans 2 to 4 years, or sometimes even longer, again, especially for organizations pursuing their first designation. So building the necessary structure and process and systems for magnet recognition can really be a significant time investment, particularly if there is foundational work that is still, in progress. So timelines can often, of course, shift as well. I do want to mention this when there are leadership changes, when there are, staffing challenges, or when there are shifting organizational priorities. And this is why it is really so critical to remain flexible and to triage your improvement efforts and to focus really on the high impact areas that are going to move your project forward. In our next video, I'm going to share with you how I manage magnet projects, how I prioritize critical actions, and how I keep everything organized so that we can stay on track. Okay, we're going to wrap up today's video with my top 5 tips for success. We're, of course, going to go into more detail on some of these things in the next video. But for today, what are some tips to get you started? So number one of the first things I'd recommend is secure leadership buy-in early. So engage leadership early to, secure resources and organizational support. So one of the things I'd recommend in doing so is schedule regular check-ins with leadership to share progress and success stories. I found that to be very helpful in my past experience and in working with other people. And the second thing is that preparation is really everything. Start with a clear action plan based on your self-assessment, identify key stakeholders, set timelines, and then, prioritize your gap closure. So one of the things I'd recommend with this is, make sure that you break your plan into phases so that you can really show early wins and start gaining some momentum. Number 3, one of the other things I would say to do is, prioritize and triage your tasks. Really focus on the most critical improvements to start building that momentum. So in doing so, you can use a priority matrix. This kind of helps you balance out quick wins and some of your long-term goals. So that is one of the things that I've seen be really successful in the past. The 4th thing is, collaborate across departments. So engage your cross-functional teams to ensure that, there is shared responsibility for success. So one of the things that I've seen be really successful in other organizations is form work groups where nursing, quality, and HR and patient experience leaders are all kind of, again, working together, and they're getting on board, and everyone's feeling like they're able to lift and help with magnet effort. So the last thing, the 5th thing I want to mention, and this is probably very obvious to a lot of people, but it can't be overstated, is stay organized. So, with this, implement project management tools, and clear timelines so that you can stay on track. So, again, one of the tips that I would have for this is, make sure that you assign clear roles and that there are really clear deadlines to really avoid last minute scrambles. You're going to want to definitely avoid that if at all possible. So those are the top 5 tips that I have for today. So I know that the magnet journey can feel overwhelming. I mean, trust me, I've been there before. But you don't have to navigate it alone. So there are a lot of resources available to support you, including several that we've talked about today. I also just wanted to mention that we have created a free resource. It's an 80-page ebook that's called the MPD Handbook. It is packed with strategies and tools and tips to help you manage the magnet process with confidence. And the other thing I want to say is that if you are ready, for some more hands-on support, you can also book some time with me. We have this really great option, which is on-demand consulting. It, really does avoid, these large corporate consulting contracts. There's a lot of flexibility there, personalized guidance. So that's, whether or not you need help prioritizing tasks, you want to look over your timeline, you need help organizing your documentation, or maybe strategizing your next steps. That on-demand consultation is a really cool way to be able to work together. So in the next video, I'm going to take everything that we've talked about today and really take it a step further. So I'm going to show you exactly how I set up and manage my magnet projects. We're going to be covering, some tools, the systems, some of the strategies that I use to stay organized, and also help your team stay on track. I don't think you're going to want to miss that video. So if you found this video helpful, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more insights on magnet recognition and nursing excellence. Also, please check out our blog for a deeper dive. We'll put all of the links in the description below. And remember, on the journey to excellence, you make all of the difference. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.